How can you tell if there's a singer knocking at your door? They don't know when to come in. Oh, by the way, there's more. The guitar player jokes. These are my favorite. How do you get a guitar player to turn down? Put a piece of sheet music in front of him. How do you get him to turn off? Write notes on the sheet music. All right, that's it. About Beautiful Guy, and it was from that same era that I keep talking about when it was that small band, and Frank was writing all that stuff, and it was this kind of cool beatnik thing that he was into, this kind of abstract bebop beatnik thing, this kind of free-form poetry thing that he had going on. That kind of extended later into things like Dangerous Kitchen and sections of the Blue Light and Meltdown things and stuff like that. I really loved that period. And the Beautiful Guy sort of encapsulates that. That's another one that was all like a head chart and just, made up, you do this and you do that, and then later I wrote it out. And that's the written version of it that the only one that exists as far as I know is the ones that I've done and what the arrangements we did for the band from Utopia.
Yes, and in a way I think your version is even better than the original. I think it's more alive.
Well, you know what? It's in a way, it's kind of more like the original. By the time it ended up on the album, David Logeman, with all respect to him, never played it with quite the same feel that Vinny did. That was one of the cool things. Vinny could do this kind of sleazy beatnik sounding thing, but at the same time incorporate all the math shit into it. That's what's amazing about Vinny, and we just had this kind of loose feel to it. Frank could do the stuff, and we were doing just intuitively, without thinking about it, all those like weird bars of 13 and 11 and stuff, and just because it fit with the words, not because we're sitting there thinking about the math, just because it kind of flowed that way, and it was the natural way to do it, And God, it's really too bad that band couldn't have stuck together. That Vinny had other callings.
What's the origin of the band from Utopia?
Somebody in Stuttgart, the promoters in Stuttgart, I guess, had the idea that it would be nice to have some ex-Zappa musicians play at the Stuttgart Jazz Festival year before last, and not sure who they contacted initially, but somebody called me. Let's see, who called me first? I'm trying to remember. Did Tommy call me or Bruce call me? I don't know. Can't remember who contacted me, but kind of said, put out the call to, some of us that didn't know each other, who wants to do it, and ended up being, Tommy and Ike and myself and Bruce Fowler, and well, you know who's on it, and Kurt McKettrick, and Chad did part of it with us, and it really was fun. It really did. Of course. It wasn't exactly the same, but for a minute there, during the rehearsals and stuff, having Ike there and having Ed on percussion and having Tommy there, and even though I never played together with Bruce Fowler in Frank's band. We were never in this band at the same time or even close, but I've always known Bruce and done a lot of other things with him over the years and been friends with him, and so it was nice to kind of put it all together, and there were moments where it did kind of feel a little bit like the old days. It was just nice to play that music again. You play the music, and it just reminds you of what it used to be like. As Ike was fond of saying on that tour, he'd grin and say, "Don't you know who I used to be?" God, but we're all old and fat now. Oh God. What happened? But, God, no, it was an awful lot of fun, it was a lot of work to get it together. Of course, we didn't have near as much time to rehearse as Zappa did. We didn't rehearse for 8 weeks like Zappa did before his shows, and they were still, saying, no, Reinhardt, play as long as you want, play 4 hours. What do you mean, play 4 hours? We only got 2 weeks to rehearse. Every one of these songs takes days to learn, And so it was not as as polished as a performance as it might have been, but I thought we did all right, and it was certainly gratifying to walk out on stage there in Stuttgart and And the people were so nice. They gave us a standing ovation just when we walked out there, and that was awful nice. And they seemed to really appreciate it, and it was really fun to do it. And went up to that gig in Cologne too. And yeah, it's fun. The music is so good. It's still fun to play the music. It's still fun to play Frank's music, and to play with people who knew how it went. Especially especially Tommy. You're going to interview Tommy too, right? You haven't spoken with him Saturday. Well, you'll enjoy. I'm glad that you're interviewing him not after me and not before, because he's such a colorful character. You will definitely enjoy Tommy Mars. But God, he's just so brilliant, and he really he understands Frank's music a lot, and was maybe my favorite keyboard player Frank ever had. I mean, George Duke is absolutely fabulous, and not to take anything away from him, because he's just such a wonderful musician, and was always my favorite keyboard player that played with Frank. But Tommy, I think, even more so, understands what was inside of Frank's head.
By the way, is George in town? You're in Los Angeles.
George Duke? I think so. I never really knew George. I mean, I met him once backstage or something, maybe. I think he's still around. He does his own thing. He's a pretty successful producer and whatnot, I believe.
Was that section from the tour you did here in the U.S.? Was that live music?
Oh, what you just heard?
Yeah.
No, it was a demo that we did. We recorded the basic tracks over here at a little studio that a friend of mine has over not too far from here in Culver City, and then finished it up here. Did the overdubs here and mixed it. Just a little demo. I had this idea that it would be nice to do an album of. See if there was enough music that we could scrounge together, we could find to put together an album of unreleased Frank Zappa music, stuff that nobody's ever heard, and there's some stuff that's never been recorded or hardly even performed. Tommy has some sheet music that he found in his box of stuff that we were reading through it, and it's not familiar to anybody. Nobody's ever heard it before, and things like this Tink 13. It's not
fabulous.
It's not. It's a lot closer to the original version that we used to do in rehearsal than what ended up as Tink Walks Amok on the album. There's some things that are different about it too. The horns weren't on there before, so we had that. But there's a few things. There's that song Solitude. I got a couple of little pieces of sheet music. Tommy has some. I've got a couple of things on rehearsal tapes. There was a beginnings of a piece called Saddlebags that never came to fruition, and parts of it ended up in other songs, but at one point it was sort of a composition. I don't know if that was ever written enough, ever got far enough writing it to put it together into anything, but it might be fun to screw around with it and see if you could make something out of it, sort of finish it off a little bit. And I don't know, from my viewpoint as a fan, it seemed to me like it would be a really cool thing if I heard that musicians who used to play with Frank Zappa and knew his music were producing an album of stuff that had never been heard before. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll do that. There's have to with that kind of stuff that and anything that's unreleased can't be done without the permission of the Zappa family, of course.
One reason for that could be that you were not always comfortable with the ideas that Frank realized in the end. I mean, the process of the song that
the way it might end up on a record after having
yeah,
played it live
yeah.
a certain way. Well, sometimes that would happen.
In rehearsal. So it changed all the time, and maybe you liked the version before.
Sometimes that would happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes that would happen. And it's interesting to go through these rehearsal tapes and hear all these different versions different incarnations that it went through along the way to getting where it finally got to. It's interesting. God, there was a bunch of different versions of Easy Meat. There were all these different little experimentations with that, and I have rehearsal tapes of. At one point, Frank had made up lyrics to "I'm So Cute" that were about Vinny instead of about Terry Bozzio. was saying something about like hey, Vinny had his glasses taped together back then, and they were. I've got it on rehearsal tape of it somewhere, but it's pretty funny. It's like Vinny does the seal call sound he used to do, and Vinny even sings it. It's pretty funny.